So my sister, she's getting married to my bully. And the reason she's doing it is because his family's filthy rich. Well, little does she know, on the wedding day, his father is going to disown him in front of everybody, and it's just because he's racist. Let me start from the beginning, because this is a wild one.
Hey guys, I'm Michaela, and I'm writing this post about my sister Jada being an absolute dumb clown. So basically, Jada got married to the same guy who bullied me throughout high school, and his name's Paul. I mean, the fact that she's marrying somebody who hurt me my entire adolescence should be enough for me to hate her forever. But no, there's more. After rubbing it in our faces and calling us impoverished and ghetto, yeah, imagine being racist to your own damn family. She developed a superiority complex, but her in-laws brought her down really quickly. You see, on the day of her wedding with Paul, his father disowned him for getting married to a black woman without even signing prenuptials. And no, that wasn't the first time they were being racist. They've openly been racist throughout this whole thing, to my sister's face, and she's just been letting it slide. Now, I know for a fact that she's just been putting up with him for his money. I know she doesn't love him or anything. I know she just wanted to chase the bag. Clearly, but now that he's gone, he has no money. She's been whining and crying about it. Obviously, none of us are taking it. Before I go into detail about what happened those past few months, let me give you guys a rundown of my relationship with Paul. And of course, to provide context over why I'm so mad at my sister. Even though Paul was 2 years older than me, we were in the same class. This is because he was put in school 2 years late while his family was in their exploration and hippie era, traveling the world. You see, I know this because Paul really likes to brag, just always talking about it well into our teenage years when I knew damn well he probably didn't even remember it. But anyways, imagine having so much money that you just up and leave for 8 months while your siblings run the family business. I mean, that's goals, honestly. So yeah, he was the oldest dude in our class. Initially, in the first few years of primary school, we got along amicably, working together occasionally and childish banter here and there. He was always a snob, mind you, and he always had some sort of god complex. As somebody who grew up with cheap noodles and toast for dinner, I'll admit I was envious of the cupcakes and chicken sandwiches he would bring for lunch, and I wanted his life so bad when I was a kid. He would show off all the time, but it was all fine and games, and I still found him tolerable until we were a bit older. Probably because of what, he heard around him at home. He started making jabs at the color of my skin. I'm black, if you haven't figured that out yet, by the way. It started as a harmless joke about how he was glad school was in the daytime, because he would never be able to see me at night, and over my 4C hair. It kept getting worse, and he made being in school tolerable, and it just led to me having a troubled teenage life. I became introverted and oppressed, and my personality, it was just constantly finding reasons to make fun of me if I ever spoke about anything in class. He used to often pull my hair, call me racist names, and he tugged at my braids whenever he passed by, and if I kept them short, he would call me a clown. It started by me straightening my hair, which is why if you ever look at my pictures from back then, you'll see fried, frizzy hair. Anyways, I think the worst part was after we all hit puberty. I grew up in size, and I naturally have wide thighs, as do the rest of the women in my family. I wasn't fat or anything, I just had thick thighs. More thick than a white person. But he just needed a reason to bully me. So, on came the fat shaming and bullying about my body. He would just laugh with his friends about how fat I was. I developed an eating disorder to that, and it took me years to eat normally. I'm not one to bully others or say bad things about them, but he sure as hell was one to speak. He had a lanky build because he was so tall and he had so much acne. The guy barely ever took a shower in high school, so he was smelly as hell. His hair was also disgustingly greasy, and he had this habit of rubbing his skin as a ton of dirt would come off. No girl wanted to talk to him because of his gross habit, and he isn't conventionally attractive either way. His nose is crooked and weird, and his beard doesn't connect. But he won't shave it, so it looks like somebody ripped off his hair from down under and stuck it on his face. So yeah, he had no room to bully others with how he looked. He's ugly even though he has all the means to be groomed and tidy. I think the worst he's ever done is, in order to kill two birds with one stone, he took the class smart dude's bag full of fat books, who carries a full-size dictionary and digest to high school anyways, and he threw it at my head saying, "Will your stupid crown protect you from this?" I had a headache for days after that, and I didn't have any bruises, but my head hurt like crazy for the next week or so. I don't really know what happened, but I couldn't stop crying, and I had to stay home for most of the time. I even failed an important exam. So yeah, that sucks. And all because he was older and really tall. I mean, he's like 7 feet tall. And back then, also, he was ridiculously gigantic. So everybody was scared of him. It took me a really long time to get over all of it, so when my sister brought him home as her new bae, I kinda went ballistic. So basically, those two met at a bar and he took her back to his place. Well, I should say his parents' place because too useless to live on his own. And as soon as Jada saw his house, she decided that he was the one. I guess my sister has insane game because somehow Paul looked past the color of her skin and was actually kind of okay to her. Well, initially at least. They had been dating for only 3 months, even when Jada got down on one knee and proposed to him. He said yes, and then she brought him to the family get-together and introduced him as a fiancé. As soon as he saw me, I saw recognition flicker in his eye. Later, he caught me alone and said some extremely rude things about my character and got up real close to my space. Thankfully, my husband Jordan noticed. I was in the kitchen too long and came looking for me. He shoved Paul off me and told him to stay the hell away from me or there's going to be severe consequences. Paul, while tall and overbearing, was still lanky enough for my husband to overpower him with a simple shove. He chalked it up to Paul being extremely drunk, but he still took Jada aside and warned her of his behavior. Jada simply shrugged it off and told him they're in love. I probably instigated him, because he'd never showed her any signs of violence. Guys, I later screamed at Jada for getting engaged to somebody who practically tainted all my teenage years and straight up ruined my childhood. Yeah, I even went to warn her that his family was extremely racist and she would have to suffer until she broke and got a divorce from him. She said that she would never get divorced and that I was secretly in love with Paul in my teenage years, and I got extremely jealous and probably flirted with him, which is why he came to me and my character. Let me tell you, my husband had to hold me back or I would have knocked some sense into her stupid brain. Anyways, I let her go on as I knew for sure that karma was going to whoop her well for me, and this wasn't going to end well for anybody. I saw the undertones of racism when we were out dress shopping for Jada's wedding. She would bring Paul's mother and sister with her to help pick the dress. They made fun of her choices and called them tacky and said that this was what they expected from somebody like her. Ugh, disgusting, honestly. It got even worse at the bachelorette party, with Paul's sister constantly checking Jada for drugs. It was infuriating, but Jada was being a suck-up and trying to appease her new family, or so she thought. Jada made fun of us quite a lot, actually. Our parents aren't extremely rich, as my mother is a teacher and my father runs a driving school. So they were protesting about the demands that Jada was making. She spent a ridiculous amount on her hair and makeup and nails and salon and everything, and I get wanting the best for your wedding, and I also know how much one spends on their wedding too. See, I was expecting a huge hole in the pocket, but I've gotten married and she was practically blowing through cash, paying way more than we could afford, and I mean it. Going to designers and big names for the exact same thing she could get at a good shop. It's like she was trying to spend just as much as she could. I got sick, really quick, and told her our parents weren't paying for her dress, which was expensive enough for a damn payment on a car. My Aunt Abby decided to help us with the wedding dress because there was too much burden on us for the crap Jada needed at her wedding. But then Paul went and said something rude to her about her weight. Aunt Abby has been going to the gym for the past 6 years. She's just thick, built, and the unkempt hair. Now, my aunt may be kind, but she ain't a pushover. She immediately told Paul that he would pay for the dress and that Jada should not expect her at the wedding. Now, Paul knew that he could not go and tell anyone about this and his disrespect, so he paid for the dress himself. Well, that's a win-win, I thought. So, things really took a turn when days before the wedding, Paul's parents showed up with a prenuptial agreement. For those of you who aren't really familiar, a prenup is a legal document that separates assets and protection of individuals from financial exploitations in case of a divorce. Good choice on their part, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it was offensive, but that's exactly what Jada wanted, right? Money. So when that happened, Jada threw a fit and asked Paul not to go through with it, claiming she was hurt his parents would think that she was in it for the money. She said the prenup was a sign of a lack of trust and showed that they expected a divorce even before the marriage. She said that she would back out of the marriage if that happened. So Paul straight up refused. Paul's parents simply shrugged and told him that he would have to deal with the consequences of that then. Oh, well. Since Paul refused to go through with the prenup, Paul's father decided that he needed to safeguard his assets anyways. So on the day of their wedding, which was actually pretty pleasant apart from the racist jeers from Paul's extended family, Paul's father announced he's disowning his son. He claimed that he could not have someone of a lower status in his family and did not want anything of his to be tainted and mixed with our kind. He also mentioned that Paul would have to look out for himself financially, and all he was getting was his bachelor pad from his college days. After that, everybody cleared out pretty quickly, and I couldn't help but smirk at the way things turned out. Jada has been pretty neutral around Paul, but she's been whining and moaning about how she's going to have to work to provide for the two of them, because her husband is useless and refused to lift a finger. She was hoping that she would live life on easy mode, but everything has gotten 10 times harder. I guess that's karma for you. I just can't wait to enjoy whatever happens next. But whatever does happen, I'll keep you guys updated. Update number 1. Hey guys, it's been a few days and I'm back with an update of how things are going for Jada, since some of you were so curious. Also, before I begin, the victim blaming in the comment section is gross. Be better. I didn't say my shortcomings were Paul's fault. I said he bullied me and that led to my dysphoria in my own head, leading me to make some unfortunate decisions. But he should not have bullied me, period. Thanks for the support though, and to the nicer comments I read, that I should not help Jada from a lot of y'all, and that I should go non-contact. I see why that makes sense, but she's my sister and I don't feel alright completely ditching her. That being said, it's her life and I'm not intervening until she asks me to. I visited Paul and Jada at their house, and if you can call it that, it's tiny, but hey, it's at least theirs and they don't have to pay rent. Poor Jada didn't get to go to a honeymoon. They used that to refund from groceries and stuff, and because both their families refused to help them out in the slightest. Jada is working 2 jobs now, and a lot of her time goes into providing for them both, because Paul is still, quote, figuring out what to do with his life, and has not decided on a career. Jada struggled to find the second job, though, because Paul's family hates her. They have influence around town, so they're ensuring her life is very hard. Paul's family is openly racist. They use slurs for people other than whites. They don't care what, you've done as long as you're white. And I wish that we were exaggerating, I really do. But their family has a huge influence in the area, and 3 guesses for who the majority race is here. My neighborhood is very isolated because of the discrimination. Of course, most people here are normal and don't give a crap, but there are exceptions, and the exceptions are influential. So I wasn't shocked when I heard Paul's mom trash talk my sister and shame her for every choice that she's made. They didn't talk about me badly, as I'm doing well, and I've earned my respect in society. I have a certain social status that I built up around here, so I could protect myself from the harassment I faced as a teenager. And it helps to be a lawyer, married to a lawyer from a legacy family. Nobody can refute that I am where I am because of my own hard work. And that's all I ever wanted. You can't say the same for my sister, who's still living off my parents and barely has a career. She's smart, yeah, just too lazy to make something of it. She wants the fast, easy road, and that's why she married Paul. Obviously, it didn't work out for her, but that's on her not heeding our warning. I'm actually surprised she didn't do something stupid like baby trap him. But they've barely been together for a year, so there's really no telling how she'll just stoop. So when I went to visit them, Paul was playing video games and Jada was overwhelmed. I helped her with the cleaning. Yes, Paul made a racist remark about that and how it should have been my career, and then she vented a whole lot to me. I didn't exactly want to rub it in her face, so I just warned her not to have kids and be extremely careful as to avoid pregnancy. I told her to wait it out and please be careful. So yeah, she's struggling right now, and I don't think the marriage will last, but we'll see. I just kind of feel bad for her since she's my sister. So, should I actually help her out or not? Update number 2. 3 months later. I thought that I would be satisfied by the karma that hit my sister, but I'm not. This is actually really painful for me, and I can't see my sister going through so much. She really had the potential to do something great with her life, but she married an imbecile, looking for the easy way out, and things got a gazillion times harder. Well, let me just say, things took a turn towards the dark, and a lot of you predicted right. Jada came to our parents seeking monetary help a month or 2 ago. My parents said no and slammed the door in their face. They've really hurt her by everything she said before the wedding, so I don't blame them for not wanting anything to do with her. My parents didn't even chew her out or say anything, they just said no and shut the door in her face. Honestly, iconic. My sister deserved it from them, but I could not tolerate her being stretched so thin. It was too much for me to bear, so I went to her house to help with the finances. When I got there, Paul was very inebriated. She explained to me that Paul, with all his free time and lack of responsibility, had turned to alcohol. As we all know, alcohol's pretty expensive when you barely have money, and since almost all of her pay for one of her jobs was going to his alcohol, she was struggling to keep the lights on. When I asked her why she couldn't simply refuse to give Paul her money for booze, she refused to meet my eye. When I tell you my heart sunk into the earth, I was near tears at my sister's poor condition. I saw red at that point, and I'm not really a victim blamer, but I chewed my sister out real good. I told her that she received constant warnings from our entire family, and that literally anyone could sense from a mile away that she was the fate of their relationship. I called her greedy and foolish and told her that if things got worse, it would be on her for not seeing the red flags, even when we begged her to see it. I gave her some cash, and then I decided to unleash the full extent of my wrath onto Paul. I screamed at Paul to get his life together and get a job. I told him that if he did not stop drinking, I would cut all his expenses off and make sure he didn't get a single penny to fund his boozing habit. I yelled at him for an hour straight, and his eyes were literally glazed over by the end of it. So I grabbed his shoulders and shook him, threatening to ruin his life. Then he pushed me off him and told me that he could destroy me with 1/4 of his strength. He hurled something extremely offensive, slurs at me, and told me he would beat me into a pulp and bury me in the sand. I was shocked at his appalling words, to say the least. And then something even more shocking happened. My sister agreed with him. She told me to leave. She told me she would call the cops on me if I didn't get out. I asked whether she knew this meant I would never look back at her again, and she nodded in the affirmation, pushing me out the door aggressively, so I decided that I would not help her anymore. The fact that she turned on me was truly my final straw, so I'm now talking to her, no, never again. It's been 2 weeks since that happened, and I remembered a lot of you were asking for an update, so I decided to post what was going on with all this. Anyways, hopefully things get better for her, but I'm not looking back. Update number 3. Oh my gosh. Guys, it's been a few days since my last update, and I'm back with some sickening information. Paul physically hurt Jada after a whole lot of booze. Finally, Jada decided enough is enough, so she left to go to Aunt Abby's house to live, but Aunt Abby didn't let her in. She told her to leave and that she had no room in her house for a traitor to our community, and reminded her of the whole wedding dress thing. After the wedding dress debacle, Aunt Abby had taken Jada aside for a talk. Aunt Abby told Jada that Paul was extremely rude, and he made those comments to her aunt he could make worse to her. She said that this seemed like pre-stages of abuse and warned Jada to be careful and leave, while it was still easy. She warned her at the time and she didn't listen. So Aunt Abby gave her some money, some advice, and resources for divorce and told her to get off the doorstep. So Jada finally ended up at my door. Now, I was extremely mad at her for everything that happened when I went to her home, but I wasn't at all okay with completely ditching her either. So I took her in. But I put forth a complete couple of conditions. I told her that I would not be interacting with her at all, and that she would have to pay rent. I've been treating her like a complete stranger ever since, and she cooks her own meals and everything. I don't even want anything to do with her, and she's just a guest. I did, however, find out that Jada finally sent divorce papers to that idiot. That wasn't the end, though. Paul had to be the entitled brat he is again. See, Paul is an alcoholic. He hasn't worked a day in his life, so when Jada left him on his own, he took a turn for the worst and did not have much money to support himself. So, his stash ran dry pretty quick. Jada had stopped supporting his lifestyle after walking out, so that slimy, grimy pig obviously crawled back to his parents. But now his parents are claiming that Jada abused and tortured their son. Her violence and misbehavior caused Paul to turn to an alcohol as coping mechanisms, apparently. Hilarious, am I right? Like my tiny sister could cause any damage to that 7-foot hunk with all the influence on the planet. Paul's gone so far as to claim that Jada used physical force and forced him to drink alcohol by pressing the bottle to his lips. So yeah, the legal battle isn't going to be easy because they both have claims of violence against each other. I'm not helping with any manner, and I'm going to stay out of it. Well, at least they're now away from each other, and in the end, well, it's the best situation. Final update. Wow, I forgot this post even existed. It's been more than a year, and I got a message asking for an update and the aftermath. I told you my sister is incredibly smart, right? She just used her brain for the wrong reason, so basically, my sister had recordings of Paul physically abusing her and took pictures of her marks. She collected receipts of Paul's alcohol purchases and kept the timestamps, placing her at work when the alleged abuse happened. She recorded their conversation where she got, him to admit that he's got a drinking problem and his false promises to fix his mistakes. She emailed all this evidence to his parents and threatened to come forward with it. Of course, all this family cared about was their reputation, so they gave my sister a huge settlement, getting her to drop charges. They also dropped the charges and gave a very public apology to my sister for the false accusations. She dropped the charges, but hey, nobody stopped her from releasing the evidence anyways. She posted it, all the recordings and receipts and every spot of evidence that she had against Paul on her Instagram. I mean, of course, they were taken down almost instantly, but by the time Instagram flagged the content as inappropriate, screenshots were already taken. Duplicates have been posted to the interwebs and everybody in town had seen it. So that was pretty cool. You know, getting the bag and ruining his life. As he was already disowned, his parents feigned ignorance over the whole situation and publicly denounced Paul. Paul moved away to someplace none of us know about, but I heard that he's currently in jail for assault. And he has an 18-year-old girlfriend on the outside who has a son with him. Now, hey, I'm not saying it's true, but I did hear it from his aunt. So I guess that is a pretty reliable resource if you ask me. Well, as for Jada, she moved out of the house immediately after receiving the settlement and bought herself a nice apartment and in a pretty nice spot. She'd finished nursing school before her marriage, and now that there wasn't any burdens on her, she joined the hospital field as a nurse. She did latch on to another rich old white guy, though, but when they moved in together, she found out he wasn't as rich as she thought, but he was pretending and actually used Jada's money. Now she's struggling financially yet again, after deciding to be dependent on someone else. So she just went through all of that just to be miserable again? I'm not sorry for her. She made the same mistake twice, and I'm definitely not helping her out.
I do not think you had the right approach, says comment of the day. This is a negative comment that got quite a lot of attention, so let's see what you think about it. I don't think you had the right approach. Your sister went through a lot and you're not on her side. You abandoned her when she needed legal aid, being a lawyer. You treated her like a stranger when she needed love from you. So, what if she was rude? She was a kid. You should have been there for her, and the fact that you were not shows how little you are as a human and how cold-hearted you truly are. But even after the legal battle ended, didn't you think that it's time to let bygones be bygones and forgive her? She was off to a new start with a straight and narrow path, and without support it could have taken an ugly direction. But you chose to stay away, so for that, OP, I want you to feel a bit of shame. What do you guys think of that? Do you completely agree or disagree? Let me know why down below. Thank you guys for joining me on today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want more daily stories, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.